T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hi, my name's Ari Flagle, and I'm fascinated with Boelens pythons. For the last 16 years, I've been traveling to the remote areas of West Papua New Guinea and Papua New Guinea, searching for this elusive snake, to study these animals in the wild, and to gain as much knowledge as we possibly can. So join me and my guests on the Boelens Python Roundtable. Welcome. What is up, everybody? Thank you for joining me again on another episode of the Boelens Python Roundtable. I am your host, Ari Flagle, and this is episode 4. I had to do a little bit of changing on the location. I was having some internet stuff, so I apologize. I'm actually at the zoo right now. But without further ado, I would like to welcome a very special guest tonight. Well, all my guests are special, but this one's particularly special for me. As a youngster, I followed this person's herpetological career for some time, including still now. So it's a real pleasure to have them on. They were doing some things when basically there was nothing really to have available. So they were having to really work these problems out. And then they eventually went into working with Boelens pythons, which is fantastic. So without further ado, I'd like to bring Stan Chiras on. Hey, Stan, how's it going?
I'm good, Ari. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm so glad I can hear you now. It was my fault. I apologize. I was getting worried because you said, "Oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm going to figure out how to do this," and I'm the one over here can't even get the damn thing hooked up. So, but we will move on. But yeah, thank you for coming on. It has been. I remember. I think we chatted really quickly the other day. I remember. Overhearing you talking at the Daytona Reptile Expo, and this must have been like, I don't know, maybe mid 90s. And I remember seeing you have like this old, like 35 millimeter kind of like photo album book with images, and they were like these enclosures of your Boelens enclosures. And I remember kind of peeking over your shoulder, like, what's going on? What's going on? So it's a real privilege. It's an honor to have you on. I've got a lot of stuff I want to ask you. So thanks for agreeing to come on. I know this is probably your first podcast that you've done, or
I've never done one video. I've done
cool.
Just verbal ones, but thank you for having me on, Ari.
Oh, of course, my pleasure. I feel like this is my first one with all the crap I was having to deal with a few minutes ago, try to get everything set up. But
yeah, this is sort of pioneering, isn't it?
It is, we are. But so for a lot of the listeners, you are one of the old schoolers, and I mean that in the utmost respect when I say old. But
yeah, I got that one covered.
Yeah, right. But you were breeding diamond pythons in the 70s. I remember reading one of your articles in Reptiles magazine where you were like, you had diamond pythons in styrofoam coolers, and they were in your garage, and they were there for a couple months, and then you were breeding, helidermids, like Gila monsters. And then I remember you getting into Boelens pythons, and which was really, really cool. And I'm going to be excited to talk to you about that as we progress further along. But let's I'd like to ask you some real basic questions, so some of the people kind of get an idea more or less of who you are and what you were doing. But like, I'm going to do the typical kind of hokey, like, what was your first reptile? What got you into reptile keeping?
My first reptile was a painted turtle that was crossing the road in Connecticut. I made my parents stop, and I jumped out and grabbed him and brought him home and named him Henry. And that was, I think the first one I ever kept, I mean, I caught snakes and things, but back then I didn't have anywhere to keep a snake. Didn't have an aquarium or anything. I was a kid,
Yeah.
10 years old or something like that, or younger. I don't know. But, I've been catching snakes and turtles throughout my youth. And my first actual pet was Henry. And I don't have any pictures of him, sadly.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Well, I know a lot of people that started off similar with that. What transitioned you from leaving well, I mean, you probably didn't leave Henry behind, but moving from Henry onto other animals?
Um, Catching my first corn snake while on vacation with my parents in Florida. Um, we were near Daytona Beach somewhere, and our hotel was off the strip, and I caught a corn, and that was a holy grail to me because of Caulfield's book, The Keeper and the Kept.
Of course.
And that just fired me up. And I went to a pet shop in West Palm and I bought another one. And luckily I ended up with a pair.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to breed them even back then. And we're talking middle 1950s.
Wow.
So, nobody was talking about breeding snakes, but that's what I wanted to do. I just, wanted to get eggs.
Yeah.
So, I had read, I had Dittmar's book, Reptiles of the World, Caulfield's books, and I was just infused with that stuff.
All the classics.
Yeah. And I still have them, and I still reread them once every 10 years or so.
So now, a lot of people are like, okay, he started off with corn snakes and this and that, but what was the reptile, like the scene or the environment like back when you were first starting this? And then as you started to like progressively get into more like, I don't know, like more advanced species. I don't want to discredit corn snakes because corn snakes are awesome. And I have corn snakes too. They're fantastic animals. But like when you started moving towards things like, the diamond pythons and things like that, when you like really, what was it like? Because we have so much technology now, which makes things a lot easier in my mind as far as being able to acquire like data for temperatures or even like a thermostat, for working our systems and things. So like, what was it like back then, getting involved into that?
Well, you were simply on your own. There was no one telling you how to keep them. There was no internet, no anything. I mean, if you wanted to buy a reptile, you looked for some reptile dealer in the classified ads section of Outdoor Life or Field and Stream magazine. You sent them $1. They put you on their mailing list, and you could mail order reptiles back then. I didn't mail order any. I just fantasized over them.
Yeah.
Back then, I didn't get into reptiles more seriously until I was a young adult in the 70s. And I was traveling more then. And honest to God, I don't remember how I met some of the people I met back then. But somehow I met Bob Applegate out in California, and I hopped on my motorcycle as a young boy and drove out and met Bob and went hunting in the desert with him.
Yeah.
And that just turned it up a notch for me.
Yeah.
It was no longer catching black racers or hognose snakes or garter snakes. My sights were set way higher. And I'm not degrading the other animals.
Of course.
To go out and hunt snakes in the American Southwest, that's a holy grail as far as I'm concerned.
Wow. Yeah, I can only imagine just during that time. I mean, things were a lot simpler in a lot of ways. I really am jealous for a lot of that time, the early on generation, just because of what you guys really had to put forth to achieve what you did, and really kind of, did a lot of groundbreaking, discovery and just husbandry and just skill for that matter. Being able to read the animals better and being able to problem solve from having virtually nothing. I can't even imagine what it was like when you were working with diamond pythons initially, where, you had an idea, but, we don't have the means or the resources or, that you guys did back then, or vice versa rather, to achieve what you were trying to do, just let alone breed, keep them.
Yeah, well, it was a fascinating time. I dug quickly into some interesting species, boa constrictors, indigo snakes, Burmese pythons, and thankfully, I was in love with the picture of the emerald tree boa in Reptiles of the World.
Yeah.
And I picked up I got one emerald from a pet shop in Ohio, but then eventually I met Charles Chase down in Miami, and he imported emeralds, and you could buy them for $25 back then. But I got into the more exotic species, and right off the bat, I was successful breeding them. And I literally mean right off the bat. I did all my research in the library about what the environmental conditions were for emerald tree boas or boa constrictors, and I did my best to duplicate them in captivity, and I was successful. And the most amazing part was the word got out. I made friends with Trooper Walsh at the National Zoo, Dale Marcellini there. I eventually made friends with Jim Murphy at Dallas,
Cool.
Joe Laszlo, and
Yeah.
was able to trade animals with them.
Wow.
And
What a privilege, and
yeah, I know.
I mean, like, it's like there's few, like, I try to surround myself with individuals like yourself, where it's like the amount of historical knowledge is just like flowing like constantly. And there are some people in my list of like I would love to have met, like, and Laszlo would have been one of them for sure.
Oh, Joe is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, just being able to hear the stories of like what he brought, like, from what I understood, he brought like such a different view to captive husbandry of working with animals. I mean, this was before like Vitalites, and like
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and I mean, even if people, I mean, that are listening to this even know what a Vitalite is. I mean, this is
Vitalite,
like,
yeah.
I mean, these big, thick, fluorescent tubes and all this stuff. I mean, this was the heyday, where everything was exciting and new and challenging. So I can only imagine how exciting it was for you, in this era to be working with animals.
It was absolutely fascinating. It just, nobody knew anything. And if, in my case, I got some credentials from things I was working with and successfully breeding. And so I got an into virtually, well, not all, but most of the zoos.
Yeah.
And I became good friends, Johnny Arnett at Knoxville, a phenomenal friend. And I funded one of his trips to South America, which never made it past Mexico. But,
No.
but I was trying to get emerald tree boas out of it, but he got drunk and spent all his money in Mexico.
I guess that happens, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, colorful stuff.
Yeah.
Joe Laszlo, if you knew him, he was such a funny guy. And I was at the time going to South America and getting Cayman for him. And so anything he had that I wanted, I could trade for Cayman.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I was learning at an exponential rate about things from these zookeepers and people who had done research and gone into other countries. And I was slowly expanding my horizons in that regard. But just being in the Amazon jungle, for instance, spending the night there and seeing how cold it can get.
Yeah.
Just opened my eyes to what an emerald tree boa that doesn't burrow in the leaves possibly had to endure. And it just, we knew nothing, and getting the information was difficult. And talking to all these incredible people was just phenomenal. I started to work with Henderson up in Milwaukee doing taxonomy on emeralds.
Wow.
Just me, some guy off the street, basically, able to work with these people. I saw my first Boelens python I guess it was either Dallas. I think it was at Dallas.
Okay.
Blody showed it to me. He pulled it out of a plastic garbage can and showed it to me.
I've heard of that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that just blew me right off my feet, but there was no way to get them back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
and nobody had bred them, so I couldn't trade emeralds for a baby Boelens anywhere.
Yeah.
So that one stuck in the back of my head, as you can well imagine.
Oh, I'm sure. Just, not just with Boelens, but just, a lot of the zoos, like having that in where you're like hanging out with a lot of these zoo guys and taxonomists, you're experiencing and being, you know, basically shown all these different species that you've just read about essentially, and now you're seeing them, first account, and then trying to figure out how to keep them alive. I'm sure. I mean, it was probably so. I mean, it must have been so exciting during that time.
Well, it's like, the saying, youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah.
Um, as exciting as it was, I didn't, looking back on it, I can appreciate it. I don't think I appreciated it enough at the time because I was simply living it.
Yeah.
It was what it was, or is what it is, right? So to me, it's just what we were doing. But to as a young man, jump in an airplane and go to Colombia,
Yeah.
that was pretty cool,
And what year was this? When was this? This was.
I don't remember, 76, 77, something
Yeah.
like that,
That's a whole different country than it is now. That's for sure.
Oh, but they still tried to sell me drugs when I was there.
Yeah. Okay. So that's good. At least they keep that consistent. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just said, no, I'm not interested. And,
Yeah. Some things never change, right?
well, I don't know how it developed. They stayed clear of it. But
Yeah.
I mean, I was there for reptiles. I couldn't have cared less about
Yeah.
anything else.
Yeah.
But exciting times. Yeah, when I look back on it, I think we all do that. We wish we appreciated what we were doing when we were younger.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way I look at my life. So many things I've done. God, why didn't I appreciate that more?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think
Yeah. I can totally relate as I'm getting. I mean, obviously, I'm still young, but as I'm getting older, I'm like looking back at times where I'm like, wow, I should have kept that, or oh, I should have really embraced that moment, or something along those lines. And I'm like, oh, it's gone now. It's just a memory,
But look at what you've done. You are my modern day idol.
Oh,
What
thank you.
you've
That's
done
too
with
kind of
Boelens
you.
pythons. No, I mean, absolutely fantastic, Ari. And I think you worldwide are responsible for the information sharing and the knowledge that's out there, and the passion for the snake. I can't commend you enough.
Thank you. That really, really means a lot. But I'm supposed to be interviewing you.
Okay, well, I have questions for you. So
Oh, okay, cool. So let's jump into the Boelens stuff then. Enough of this, past stuff. Let's get into this Boelens stuff. So was the first time that you saw, when you encountered a Boelens python, was that from Bloody showing it to you at the back of the was it Fort Worth or Dallas?
I don't remember. I think
Okay.
it was Dallas because I think I was there to see Murphy, I think.
Okay. So in the back of Dallas, was that the first time you had saw one in that trash can?
Yes.
What was the build up beforehand? Was it like, hey, psst, I need to check this out. You got to see this, or
No, he it was a check this out, you got to see this. And I was
Yeah.
like, what? And I knew it was going to be good.
Yeah.
When he reached in there and I could see he was pulling up something big, and he had it just past mid body to the tail side. And I saw this big black thing coming out. I had no idea what it was.
Wow.
I was totally unprepared. I don't believe I knew they had Boelens.
Really?
I don't think I knew much about Boelens then. Really,
Wow,
where was it in the literature where they weren't listed on any snakes, any snake lists for sale?
Yeah, I mean, I remember because I had recently I had been talking to some herp historians, I guess. And I had asked him, I was like, hey, when was the last time, or when do you recall seeing, Boelens pythons, available on a list? And because I mean, I love seeing all these old, like, because I'm a member of like the old school herp groups and all this stuff. And I love
Me
seeing all
too,
these.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's so cool. I love seeing it. It's like, you get a Amazonian pygmy dolphin for $25, or like, it's like, also, I mean, you probably could bought who knows what, God knows what you could get. And like, I remember I had asked, I think it was Michael Berger, I was asking about it. And he said, I think it was like in the early 90s to mid 80s, they started kind of showing up. But even at that point, I think it was still, you know, not an animal that was really known much about, let alone in captivity. I mean, obviously they were described in, 1952, but before they became like, not, I hate to use the word mainstream, but before they became something more of an entity in the herpetocultural world, I think it was around like the early 90s to late 80s. Um,
Yeah.
but you'd be able to know, you can correct me on that because you were in the thick of it during that time. As far as being able to see stuff like that. So do you recall seeing anything come in around that time, or when did you first start seeing animals becoming available?
Well, Cameron had him at
Okay.
Bushmaster,
Yeah.
and I was living in Denver, which is where
Okay.
I had my Boelens, and Cameron wasn't terribly far away from me, and I owned an ultrasound. So Cameron would call me whenever Boelens came in, and we'd ultrasound them to see if we had follicles or
Yeah.
whatever.
Okay.
So I was privy to a lot of those animals that came in. He wouldn't sell me any that had really big follicles,
Of course. Yeah.
but he held those. But that's when I really became aware of them, because I was really specializing on Amazon. I can say this in English, right?
Yeah.
On Amazon basin emeralds at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a pretty extensive collection. I had that, I think, the first snowflake animal.
Yeah.
And so I was breeding emeralds, in my entire snake room was devoted to emeralds. So Boelens became sort of under in my radar at that point in time.
And you had some good trade collateral too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had some incredible emeralds. I was hatching back then. I guess hatching isn't the right term, but
Yeah. So you said, so you were able, so obviously you were able to get animals from Cameron at Bushmaster when they were coming in. Was it,
yeah.
I mean, obviously, was it still really difficult to acquire them back then?
Well, he didn't have a lot. You know, a shipment would come in from Indo, and
Yeah.
there weren't always Boelens. And the shipments where there one or two or three was the most I ever saw.
Yeah.
Cameron could give you an accurate answer. Might have had more than I know,
Yeah.
but he was. I mean, I don't think in a year's time he had more than a dozen come in, and
Well,
I could
okay.
be
And
wrong, but that's all.
these were larger animals too, right?
Yeah, pretty much
Yeah.
adult size. 8-9 foot.
When what was the what did you see, like, or how do I say it? Like, what do you think were the most, or particularly in your situation, were the biggest challenges associated with keeping them when you had, and how many animals did you eventually acquire to have your group or your collection?
Well, I mean, this goes all the way back to the 70s. I just started saying, oh, okay, these things are from where? How high? What? 7,000 feet? I said, well, I live in Denver. I lived at 5,200 feet. That's good. But I would try to get information from Cameron, and
Mhm.
I don't know if he didn't know or he wasn't sharing at the time, but all I could find out was they were a montane species, and the information I could sort of look up in the library back then was that it gets pretty cold and chilly and damp, and I wish you were around then. It would have been real nice.
I would have been a
But
really ugly guy if I was that old, like I was around then. I'd be like, had this crazy beard and all that stuff.
well, that'd be interesting to see.
Yes, yeah, for
But
sure.
I was trying to find out what I could about him, and there really wasn't much information, as you know.
Yeah.
But I was able to get the weather information basically for Indo in those elevations, and put together my program. As far as how many animals I got, I picked up those 3 animals that Paul Miles had.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yes.
Yeah. And then I started gathering more animals from Cameron.
Okay.
They weren't always available to be released, and the ones I really wanted, he wanted to hold and see if they laid eggs.
Yeah.
But I picked up a couple smaller ones from him as well. So I don't think I ever had more than 6 at a time.
Okay. So you had a decent sized group of animals
Yeah.
to work with. What was your ratio? Do you remember?
I believe it was 2.4 or 5. If
Okay.
unfortunately, my memory's a little cloudy. I'm getting up there, so
Oh, sorry.
uh,
So
I go
I'm trying
ahead.
to think. Okay, so 2.4 to 2.5 on your animals. And when you were first initially keeping these animals, obviously you said you were trying to like, find weather data and stuff like that. How did you set them up? Like, what was your design for your enclosures? Because I know like one of the coolest things about when you were keeping these is you provided these really large indoor outdoor access enclosures. Did you initially start with that idea, or did that progressively build up into that?
No, I went into my Gila room because I had a separate room in my basement that I bred Gila monsters. And I decided I wanted to make this a top priority project because basically they were saying you can't breed them and you can't
Yeah.
even keep them alive.
Yeah.
I said, well, I want to go after this. And again, not feeling I was going to conquer it, but just I love the challenge and
Yeah.
fascinating species. And because they were sort of limited in availability, I thought this would be really cool if we could breed them. So I've sent you the pictures of my cages.
Yes. Yes.
The total cage was 30 feet long, uh,
Nice.
but I had one very large inside cage, which then branched off into two more cages, one higher and one lower, where I could run temperature gradients. I filled them with cypress bark mulch, some water tubs, which they didn't really use,
Mhm.
hiding places, and I had ficus plants in there, and I think ferns. But then I built shelves in the bigger one, the bigger cage, and I just had round tubes going between each cage, like a
Yeah.
6-inch tube they could go through to go wherever they wanted. And they're a very active snake. So they were cruising around a lot. But I built something I built for my Gila monsters, which is a pressure sensitive area for them to bask. So they can go lay on this shelf, and this shelf depresses to one of those instant on off electrical switches, and
Okay.
it turned on some heat lamps. So
That's
they
really
could go,
cool.
yeah, they could go get on it and turn the light on themselves, in essence. And bones are fairly smart animal, really,
Yeah.
for a snake. So they figured it out pretty quickly. If I go up there, the light comes on. So they could bask whenever they wanted. And I had several, I forget, they're 350 or 500-watt bulbs, so I could really cook them.
Yeah.
Because my feeling is they're a black snake. So if evolution said, paint yourself black so you can absorb your limited opportunity to bask, right? So
Mhm.
I gave them the opportunity to get a lot of heat at once, and they used it. And then when they were warm enough, they left and went
Very
wherever they
cool.
went. But then I added the outside enclosure. So I put a trap door in the wall of my cellar, and I just put a canvas flap over it so they didn't have to do anything hard to go through it. Um, and I built a cage, which again, I know I sent you the pictures of,
Mhm.
where they could get direct exposure to sunlight. And what I found was it was actually too hot for them. They, when you put the entire snake out there, it's not being like being under a basking light. Every
Yeah.
square inch of that snake is absorbing
And it
UV
absorbs it
radiation.
fast too.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
fast. And I found they get overheated and just leave.
Yeah.
So I put shade cloth over it so that they could still stay outside but stay under the shade cloth, or they could go get themselves exposed to the sun. But they really didn't use it a lot. Uh,
Interesting.
they went outside a lot, and I built a little pond in there, and a little waterfall, and I had an electric pump going, and that was just for you know my personal uh,
Aesthetics.
artistic expression. They didn't need that, but I liked it. So they were able to expose themselves to the chilly nights of Denver,
Yeah.
uh, and the relatively warm days, and then go seek whatever they wanted inside. Which, interestingly, when I've watched some of your videos and
Mhm.
read your book, Serpents in the Clouds, available from Ari Flagle. Uh, you know, I saw some of the places you found them, and I went, oh my God, you know, I wish I knew that back then, because I would have made my hiding spots in their cages even more
Yeah.
difficult to see them in, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not describing this well, but just made it more like the caves they go into.
Yeah, it's
I didn't
weird.
know
Like
about that.
they really, I mean, I've seen them in rock systems and I've seen them in terrestrial nesting scenarios, and the similarity that they both share is they really like that contact security of, being, tight against something. Um, but I keep thinking about that automated platform you made, and that's so cool. Especially during that time where it was like you coming, like I would have never thought to do that. And I'm so interested to find out, like, did you see any kind of like learned behavior in a way where they were utilizing it, as needed? Or I mean, obviously they're needing it, but like in influx of, what I'm trying to say? Like,
Yeah. Oh, you're
oh,
in. Are you still there?
yep, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Uh, yeah. Unfortunately, my memory isn't serving me too well. I know they used it,
Yeah.
and I remember thinking back then, they're not using it like the same time every day. I expected
Okay.
they would go for a sunrise type time frame.
Yeah.
And there was a window in the wall of that room, so they could see the natural photo period.
Okay.
Enough light came through that they would know sunrise and all that. So I just remember at the time thinking they just use it whenever they feel like it,
Hmm.
and I didn't see rhyme or reason to it. And that doesn't really make sense to me. Um, but you know, I virtually knew nothing about them, so
Yeah.
I was just observing what they did.
Well, yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, obviously, I would think, if once they understand, I go up here, it gets warm after so many times doing that, they're going to use it as they need it. As, where obviously in the wild, in an in situ situation, they're going to, the photo period is going to trigger, that behavior of, oh, it's the sun's coming up, that's associating with warmth. I'm going to go out and warm myself, as opposed
Right.
to I can go sit on this ledge and I'll get warm at 1 a.m. if I want.
Yeah.
But that's
And
a
I did
really,
come down there. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I
oh
did
no,
come down there at 1 in the morning and find them on it.
that's interesting. I mean, obviously they're using it for some reason. It's not like, they can get off of it when they want to too. So that's a really interesting thing. It's the first time I heard that before, so that's really cool. I'm
Well,
glad you remember that.
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
You've reported some of the temperatures you've shot of snakes
Yeah.
that are in their little crevices or their caves, and they're quite warm.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean,
and
when you compare it to the outside ambient temperature, it's considerably warmer.
right.
Um,
Now, is that because the rocks are such a heat sink that it just keeps it warm from the whatever period of sunlight those rocks get to absorb heat?
I think a little bit of both, honestly.
Really?
Obviously, the animals are coming out. They seem to be coming out at peak times where it's like, 10:30 to 11 o'clock. They're out for like an hour or two, and then they're gone for the rest of the day.
That's what
And
you'd expect.
yeah, and like what we talked about, where they're a dark colored snake, they're going to be absorbing that heat just super fast.
Right.
And then the nesting areas that they really favor, especially like with the terrestrial ones that the couscous burrows are in, it's like compost, which is like anybody that knows compost, you open it up and it's just humidity and temperature. So I
Right.
think it's almost kind of like playing off itself in a way where the animals are, they're taking that warmth from that period of whatever, however long, going in there, and then it's absorbing into that, material that they're basically around or in. And it's kind of maintaining it throughout that night where it gets really chilly at night. And then they just repeat the same kind of scenario over and over.
So you mentioned compost. So the
Yeah.
material in the den, or let's call it a den that they
Yeah.
go in, there's enough of that material that the composting action can occur, and they can contribute to it when they come in from
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so I've stuck my hand down into these chambers, and it's it's really damp outside of the environment always. There's always moisture everywhere outside, but down inside the chambers or the nests, it's not, physically damp. It's, ambient humidity that you're getting, and the soil,
Oh,
yeah, the soil clumps, but it doesn't drip moisture. So it's like that really fresh, earth smell, vegetation that's been composted down, because these couscous are essentially making these burrows they go in, down, a foot or 2 foot deep. And then
yeah.
the snake will trail that couscous, eat the couscous, and then just take that burrow. And then just kind of reside in there. So it's kind of like working off of itself in a way.
All right, so they're squatters.
Yeah,
So
yeah, essentially it's a squat. They're squatters. Yeah,
I wish I knew this
yeah,
when I had them, because I would have, just from what I've seen of your videos and in your book,
yeah.
I would have built a subterranean hide for them with material in that would create this situation for them. I would
That would
try
have
to
been awesome.
replicate that,
Yeah.
because this is a difficult species to master. I mean,
It's, I think that is one of the alluring qualities of these animals. Obviously, they're the visual appearance of them, they're stunning. It's a black and yellow snake,
yeah.
with rainbow iridescence. And then on top of that, it's like, they live in an area where you wouldn't anticipate an animal that big to be in. There's just all this mystery, and, just they're just a very special animal. And I mean, everyone's like, oh yeah, but my snake's special too. It's like, well, yeah, of course, but this is different. This is, this is something even more. This is below, like we're going deeper than just the regular, run of the mill animal.
What are they even doing living there is my question.
Yeah,
And,
that's the
and then
thing.
I have another question.
Yeah.
It's such a highly specialized environment. How on earth does a young Boelens python survive? What does it eat?
That,
How,
so,
how do they survive?
so that is one of my ultimate questions to answer. And I
Yeah.
hope I can do it in my lifetime, because it's like, you see, I'm actually getting ready to put out, I was actually working on a little bit ago, a note for the Herp review, on, and where it's talking about nesting in prenatal kind of conditioning and care and observations. That's really interesting. But it talks about how the baby, or what I'm talking about is how the babies will remain with the female in that nesting area up until that first shed, where I've been able to
Wow.
observe that, and then they disperse. But even like, I mean, the environment is so, you've got like all this like prehistoric vegetation, and just like thousands of years of just building up of environment. It's
Yeah.
like, I always joke, it's like, what's going on underneath? Is there like a big Boelens party down there where it's like, they're all down there? But with the
That could
babies,
be it,
like,
Barry. That could be it.
it could, it could be, it's like, it could be a big Boelens party. It's like I'm always walking like on this little ledge. I've got God knows how many feet deep of just vegetation below me. It's like, there's, I've never found a baby before, excuse me, but no wonder, because it's like, just because they're this brick red coloration where they look very different from the adults, they're gone. I mean, it's like, who knows what they're feeding on under there. I think it's probably like little skinks or frogs, or who knows. I mean,
That's my first question. What are they eating?
yeah, and then the frequency of the feeding too, because you've got to figure, something young has got to feed, frequently to grow.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
it's really just, it's just exciting, because it's like, I love having questions like that, where it's just like, we hope to learn that. Even
Are
with
they,
the frequency of the dietary frequency with the adults, that's still like unknown.
unknown? Yeah.
Yeah.
Are
What
they, are
would,
they
speaking, go ahead.
are they too small to put a radio transmitter in, the baby Boelens?
Babies would be difficult. Adults
That's what
would
I
be
thought.
would not be a problem. The babies
Right.
would be
Yeah.
hard. The other thing with the babies is, like you'd have to do like a 2-year-old animal because those neonates are just, their skin is just
I know.
so fragile. I mean,
I didn't
it's
know if the technology had gotten to a point where you could put a nanobot in them or
yeah.
something.
Well, I mean, when I did some stuff checking out radio telemetry stuff, I mean, you can get radio telemetry for a dragonfly. So why couldn't I get one on a baby Boelens python? You know, it's like, so who
Yeah.
knows? One of these days, I mean, it would be fascinating to find out where they go or just what their activity pattern is. And I'm kind of like going into some topic because like I was contacted recently by a friend overseas that does a lot of stuff with telemetry, and he's like, hey, I want to help you do this project, blah blah blah, I'd like to get involved, where we could monitor snakes, monitor some individuals in captivity and utilize their behavior, and relate it to like, okay, this is what the behavior typically would give readings for eating or defecating or just waking up in the morning for movement and going and basking, and then try to relate that to wild specimens that we would tag, which would be fascinating to see if it would work. So I think the technology is there. It's getting there. So I mean, who knows what in the next 5 or 6 years what I'm able to do with that kind of stuff.
You're the guy to do it.
Oh well, I really appreciate that, man. But
Listen, I want to do this with baby Gila monsters
oh,
and
cool.
with baby emerald tree boas.
Oh, that would be so cool.
I'm fascinated how both of those species survive as babies.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely fascinated. I know how baby pine snake can survive, and
Yeah.
an indigo snake and a boa constrictor. Those two species and Boelens, those three would be at the top of my
Oh,
list.
I mean, it's so funny because like as like a lot of times, I mean, most keepers, including myself, a lot of times it's like okay, we look at the final outcome of the animal. It's an adult animal. It's like, oh, okay, but we fail to like really observe like, okay, predatory situations, what happens, where does that baby, when it comes out of the egg, go, and how does it survive? Because it's being thrown in this gigantic environment with all these different variables that it's never been able to encounter before. It's not like a mammal where it's being taken step by step. You eat this, you don't eat this, you go over here, you don't go over here. It's you learn or you're toast essentially.
Well, and they are prey.
Yeah.
I mean, a bird can eat a baby emerald or a baby Boelens, I'm sure.
Oh,
I don't know
yeah,
what
big
birds
time.
are there, but
Yeah.
they not only have to survive not being eaten by something, they have to get enough to eat to grow up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I
the
think
others,
learning that, I'm sorry, but I think learning
oh,
that could tell you a lot about the adults as well.
yeah,
I mean,
I
their
completely
evolution.
agree. Because a lot of it too, like I mean, obviously, when they reach a certain size, they're the predominant predator in that area. There's not
Right.
much that's going to bother them, but getting up to that point, and then also talking about in the wild, such a slow growing animal because of the frequency of food that they're eating or whatnot or variables. It's a whole really interesting scenario that's just could really prove a lot of light to just success down the road. I completely agree.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me.
It is.
I really got on this because I bred Gilas back in the 70s
Yeah.
and emeralds, but I just right off the bat wondered how this works. And I remember a couple of years ago, some construction workers unearthed hatchling Gila monsters like 2 or 3 feet underground.
I
in the
remember
earth.
hearing about that.
Well, there's pictures of it. How
Yeah.
the hell did those little guys get up
Yeah.
to ground level?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many questions that I have for that kind of stuff, and I
Yeah.
probably won't live long enough to know the answers. But I mean, I just thought of this when we were talking about the Boelens and the
Yeah.
hatchling. And is there a way to keep track of where they go and what they do?
Yeah.
It'd be
I
fascinating.
mean, there's always a way. I mean, just figuring it out where it would work to be able to get, value, data from that. I mean, I'm sure we could come up with a way to do it. It's just so interesting because, like, we really don't like. There's not, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody's listening to this, but like, I don't know, like, there's not a lot of studies on babies really that I can recall on various species, like where they go once they're born, like what is the cycle, like where do they go, where do they distribute, things like that. I mean, we're just starting to now realize some of the maternal behavior that we're seeing, not just with some lizard species that we've known about before, like, Carusia, or, what else? Some of the rock lizards, like the cord eyelids and things like that. But also we're seeing it now, with a lot of these rattlesnakes, king cobras, obviously. And there was a report, there was a paper that came out on African rock pythons showing prenatal care or something interesting. So there's all these new
Wow.
like things that are being, looked at, which are fascinating, and that it really helps kind of help us fill in those little spots for, success and, understanding these animals in the long run.
Yeah, well, I mean, it'd be wonderful to know. You probably never could figure out, but what is the actual percentage survival rate of a
Yeah.
litter of any of these species?
Yeah.
It's got to be low.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, it's got to be low. Finding enough food, not getting predated. I don't know what it would be, but the survivors are true survivors, right?
Yeah.
But if it was possible to stick with a hatchling up until it was 5 feet long or something.
Oh gosh, that would be
Could
so
you imagine
incredible.
the data that would be?
Oh my God! Not just on a Boelens, but like on a baby Gila monster. Give me a break! How cool would that be?
Absolutely. All my years of breeding Gilas
Mhm.
and chasing them in the desert, learning that they spend like 90% of their lives underground.
Yeah.
Just fascinates me. How do they survive when food is available for only a few short months
Yeah.
out of the year, really?
And all the droughts too. I mean, you've got to
Right.
deal, and then flooding also, like torrential floods and
Yeah.
everything. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's fascinating. I think that's like why. I mean, that's why we do this, because there's all these questions that we, are just like constantly. And I feel like if you get to a point where you don't have questions, you shouldn't be doing this anymore. It's like,
Well, see, you're special in that regard, and so are the people who are tackling these difficult to conquer species.
mhm.
I mean, this where you are with Boelens and what we're talking about reminds me of where we were in the 70s with all kinds of species, and that's what drew me in was the challenge and the excitement and it
Yeah,
just absolute unknown, but the fascination of knowing what is the answer. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
it kept me
And
up a lot of nights.
is that the answer too? It's
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the other
Just
thing
when
is
you
like,
think you've
that's kind
got
of
it.
crazy. Yeah. But so like with your did you notice any, like, obviously we got off on a really interesting tangent, which I'm glad we did, because that was just really it opens up a whole other series of questions, and but with when you were keeping your animals, did you notice any like consistent behavioral traits or intelligence differences that really set Boelens pythons apart from other pythons that you had worked with or interacted with?
Well, the one thing I told everybody back then is these guys are curious. You open the cage and they come
Yeah,
over and say hello.
yeah,
They want to know what you're doing. I don't know. It wasn't feed reaction. I wasn't going in there to feed them, and they knew that.
yeah.
And I'd be cleaning one part of the pen, and my pens are so long. They'd come cruising over to see what Dad was doing.
That's
And
awesome.
and I'd lift them up, and they'd crawl around me, and like, wow, these guys. I don't know how you measure reptile intelligence. I
Yeah,
truly don't. But they just seem smart to me.
yeah.
Uh, unlike some snakes that just hide their head in their coils or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, no, I agree completely. There's a little bit more going on there than other species, present, I think. And I
Of
don't
snakes,
know
yeah.
if, yeah.
I mean,
eh,
there's some varanids that are
oh gosh, yeah, yeah,
really smart, and Gilas, I don't know how smart they are, but they're very interactive if
yeah,
you raise them right. So and that's fun to work with animals like that. But Boelens to me were just a joy to work with.
yeah, yeah. No,
An
they're
absolute joy.
fascinating. What do you remember? Okay, so with your animals you had, were they yellow or were they white?
Yellow.
Okay.
Yellow,
Did
yeah.
you ever
I
see any white individuals or cream color individuals during your time?
I knew about them, and I think I seen photos, but I'm not sure I saw any. I was told that they came from an extreme end of the archipelago. Is
Yeah.
that true?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like I don't want to say it's true and I don't want to say it's not true. So for anybody that's listening, there's, obviously Boelens pythons are found only on the island of New Guinea, which is a relatively large size island, and they
In your
inhabit
book,
the new, yeah.
in
And
your
the,
book, you said it was 300,000 miles long.
yeah, it's a really decent sized island. I mean, and it's
Ari,
mountain.
Ari,
It's got this mountain chain.
Ari,
So
I'm giving you a hard time. I said
yeah,
three.
right. I know. It's been a long day. It's been a long day. 300,000 miles. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's in your book. I think it was a typo. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that. Oh my God.
Oh, I'll look it up and I'll text you whatever it was.
Okay, good, good, good. I'm gonna have to check that out and make sure that I gotta now make sure on the next volume it's fixed.
No, I read that and I thought, oh my God, it goes around the world how many times?
Ah, oh God, I hope that's not on there. That's Jesus. That's terrible. Now
I'm
you owe
sorry.
me.
What were you
Now
saying?
you owe me a Bigfoot story for that.
Oh, that's true.
But no. So what I was saying is, so obviously they inhabit the New Guinea highlands, that spine of mountains that go from
Yeah,
the far left to the east, west and east, and there have been reports of animals from the on the PNG side, which would be the Papua New Guinea side, being morphologically a little different looking. And when I say that, for people that are listening that don't understand what I'm saying, it means they look a little different, and some of that is also reported with the coloration on the bandings, where they have more of a cream or white banding color on them, and they're also a heavier bodied snake in some situations. Now,
that's what I heard. They are heavier.
exactly. And I've reached out to a lot of people in the old school days, when Papua New Guinea did export animals out, and they remember seeing some really large individuals. And I've also seen, now that I'm starting to do some more work, or doing some work now in Papua New Guinea as opposed to West Papua, I'm seeing a lot of photos from a lot of the institutions of really interesting individual animals that are larger in body proportion, as well as having that white cream color banding. And now some people are like, oh, it's just when you put a flash on them. It's like, no, this is not when you put a flash on them. This is the actual color of the animal.
Yeah.
And I mean, the New Guinea Highlands, it's like, it's a very unexplored place. Boelens pythons are probably the smallest of any of the discoveries that could be made there. I mean, I'm sure there's all sorts of hidden jewels that are in the mountains there that we'll never know about. But I was always curious to see if any of those animals you had come in contact with, just because of the difference that they exhibit.
No, but
Morphologically
there weren't that many animals
coming
around
in.
at that time.
Yeah,
I mean, and we knew nothing.
yeah. Well, it's exciting though. I mean, I'm sure you knew a lot of people that had lost a lot of those animals too when they were working with them, because I remember hearing a lot of the horror stories with initially bringing those in and trying to acclimate them.
I lost animals.
Yeah.
I had a young one I got from Cameron. It was about 3 feet long when I got it, and I grew it to 5 feet, and it rolled over dead one day.
Yeah.
While I was watching it, it just rolled over. And how do you explain that? But
Yeah.
my big gravid female, lungworms of some sort,
Yeah.
but she rolled over dead, full of eggs. I mean, God Almighty.
Yeah, I remember the lungworms were a
Yeah.
huge one. I remember seeing images of, I mean, I've got some of them in my book stuff too, where they were these huge, just worms they were pulling out, and
They're gross.
oh yeah, just I mean, and I don't know if because I haven't taken wild fecal samples really on some of the areas, which I can't believe I haven't yet.
I was going to ask, why haven't you?
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm picking up all sorts of shit out there, and might as well pick up that shit.
Yeah,
It's
really.
like to be able to like really kind of look at that stuff to see what kind of parasites are in there. I mean, especially with correlating what they're actually eating. I mean, obviously we know they're eating couscous, and it's a big mammal essentially. So it's probably going to have all sorts of stuff that they're going to be taking in. But, it'd be very interesting to kind of do some examining on some stool, I guess, and and see what presents itself. But
That would be a real shit show for you.
yeah, right. Nice. Yeah. you know, but so when you were keeping them, aside from the fact when you got really really close, man,
Yeah.
on producing them,
Yeah.
were there any memorable moments really, or like kind of breakthroughs that you had with your animals, like acclimation success, the breeding stuff, or any like unique observations that you can remember? um
Well, just their overall behavior was phenomenal, but
yeah,
providing that 30-foot long cage with basically 4 sub cages, giving
yeah.
them the opportunity to go where they wanted. And they tended to stay in the lowest one, which was the coolest one.
Okay. What were the temperature? Do you remember? If you were to
Um,
guess.
you know, I would be lying if I said I remembered, and I would be
Okay.
making it up.
No
I
problem. That's fine.
don't remember. I
Yeah.
don't.
It was substantially cooler. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and intentionally, because I knew something about where they came from, so I had
Yeah.
to provide that. I just wish I knew about the denning. I would have provided them something considerably different for hide box.
That would have been interesting to see what that variable would have done, if it would have done anything, with just because I mean, essentially your animals had everything that they were really wanting. I mean, they had a timed heater, for God's sakes. It's like, so when they wanted to warm up, they could warm up. But having that kind of a nesting chamber kind of thing there might have been really interesting to see what kind of behavior would have presented itself.
Well, it's interesting with my Gila monsters. I kept them on 4 by 8 foot cages that were about 2 foot tall and open to the top,
Yeah.
and I provided them with underground nest boxes. So it was basically a tunnel that they could go down and get into a nest box. Not a nest box, but a hiding box to go down,
Okay.
because I knew they were burrowing animals. So I gave them that. And you go in and say, "Where's all the Gilas?" I say, "Well, they're in that box down there." And I could pop the top, but they wouldn't always come out and bask either, which amazed me. Um,
Interesting.
and they had the opportunity, just like with the Boelens, to turn their lights on and off themselves.
Yeah.
And when I was breeding them last a few years ago in Tennessee, I had them facing an southeast, huge plate glass window, and they could get sunlight, direct
Okay.
sunlight. Sort of, it was filtered through glass, of course. But there were days when they just didn't come out of their hide box at all.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Boelens, if you've observed if they come out every day or what, but
Um,
that means they're happy at the temperature they're at, which in the case
yeah.
of Gillis was cooler.
Yeah. In the wild, I mean, obviously being able to access the area where they're at daily is can be tricky. For the most part, they have kind of like a preset time that I've noticed. And also like in captivity with animals, um, for the most part, I think if they get accustomed to a routine, or the routine is, you know, what they're really looking for, then they'll start like it's like, okay, I can tell like they're going to be out right now. And like for an example, I remember when I was at one of the AZA facilities for a number of years, I was fortunate enough to one of the volunteers was a UV Gary Ferguson, the UV Lord, I called him, and like that was his entire focus was ultraviolet lighting, and he was doing a lot of it with panther chameleons and such. Where I said, well, hey, would you like to kind of assist me with doing a thing with Boelens? And he's like, oh yeah, that'd be great. And so we set up like kind of a controlled environment situation where I was using the large 6 foot vision cages at the time, and I had, I can't remember the group of animals. It was probably about 5 or 6 animals, and I had them kind of stacked, on top of each other alongside. So it was kind of like a little bowling spot. And I had a heating element for obvious morning basking and afternoon basking off to one side of the enclosure, and then I had a ultraviolet source on the very far left opposite side. And I wanted to see if there was particular times where they would be utilizing one or the other. And for the most part with the males, the males didn't really care. They had, they'd be out in the morning and I'd be like, okay, the males are going to be out basking now. And they were. But with the females, what was very interesting was the females would switch their basking times and replace it with ultraviolet lighting basking, essentially, where they'd be underneath the UV lights only during follicular development stages. And
Oh,
I could be like, okay, what time is it today? Or what month is it? I was like, all right, the girls are going to start doing this. And you could go in and you could see, all the females on one side of the cage all hugging the UV and not even near the heating element, where the males were all the way hugging the heating element. So
that's
that was really,
fascinating.
really interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we published that. We might have done something for it, but it was really cool.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Frederick in Sweden has
Yeah.
done very well with Boelens. Do his snakes follow a regimented pattern like you're talking about here?
Yeah, so the way he has his enclosures set up is the original
I've seen a
enclosures,
picture of it. Yeah.
because the original enclosures are different than now, I believe, and I could be wrong. I haven't seen his new
But he
setup
was
in a while.
successful on the first ones, right?
On the first ones, yeah, and he
Yeah.
had the kind of like stereotypical like linear fluorescent tube that was like located in the middle of the enclosure that we all do, and then a basking spot off to one side.
Hmm.
So I don't know if he necessarily observed any kind of basking kind of similarities. But
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't even know if I've asked him that. That's a good question. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to ask Frederick that question. Yeah, because I remember, I don't know if I've asked him if he's ever noticed that before.
Yeah. I mean, if they would exhibit a pattern and he's had success, then
Yeah.
that you can plug that pattern into your information bank.
Yeah, I mean, it was really evident, and then at first, a lot of times, people will be like, "Well, how did you know that was really what's going on?" Well, fortunately, I
Right.
had the zoo's vet there, and I was able to coincide it with ultrasound usage as well. So I
Oh,
said,
so you knew the sex.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
was like, hey, I would really like, can you sneak away for lunch and come and ultrasound these snakes? And I was like, oh, sure. And then we would time it where the onset of the females would start doing that kind of change, and they'd move over to that other side. And we would, sure as shit, we'd find the development of follicles and they'd get up to a certain size. And that's when I would start trying to start doing pairing during the follicular development stages. But yeah, it was super interesting. I mean, they're strange snakes, man. They're just really cool. They're just. I hope they still remain an enigma. I really do. I mean, as much as I would love
That
to
would be
see,
great.
just
Yeah.
like it's like I love just like that mysticism with them, where it's just like wow, it's like. And I say this a lot. It's like we're in it's 2025, and it's like we've really unlocked a lot of secrets or techniques for certain things, but there's still some things that are still really difficult. And I just hope that Bol and I remain kind of like in that category still, just because it makes it just really exciting. And I don't know. I guess I'm lame,
Well,
but
have you ever say you find an animal basking and you
yeah.
know its den is nearby? Have you ever sat on that animal for 24 hours and just watched its pat? I mean, not on its face, obviously.
Yeah,
What
yeah. So I've wanted to. The only the difficult. I mean, I could do it, but it's just really dangerous.
Why is
The
that?
the habitat itself, sitting out. Um, there's a lot of civil unrest in a lot of these areas.
Oh,
So it's I'm out with a village group that that kind of adopted me per se, but it still doesn't put out the risk of anything else happening. Once I'm outside of the safety of the village, it's still tribal land, but anything can essentially happen. So being able to sit out there to be able to watch could be very difficult. But I put trail cameras out and stuff like that
I
too.
was going to ask you if you
Yeah.
do that. They'll shoot video every time they see movement or something.
Yeah, and for the most part, I've caught some movement, so they're triggering. But I mean, I'll be honest, I've never found a snake outside at night. It's just, it's like this dew
Really?
rain coming down. It's just really cool. It's wet.
Wow.
Um, So it's like, they're, from what I've seen in the areas that I've been at and the observations I've made up to this point, it's, everything's typically going to be happening, you know, when it's light out, when the sun's out. That's when they're going to either hunt or something's going to come by the nesting area and they're going to cue in on it and grab it before, but they're not going to really, from what I've seen at this point, they're not going to really be cruising around at night as much.
Well, that was one of the observations I had with the Boelens in the big cage. Is
Yeah.
they packed it in at night,
Yeah.
and I was surprised, but I didn't know anything near what you know about, and I have gleaned from you now about
Oh,
their,
well, thank you.
and it would be easier to understand now. But
Yeah.
it interests me that they weren't cruising around at night.
Yeah, no, it was, because I was wondering what their activity was, but it's just like, it's not a pleasant place to cruise around at night for an animal, let alone a person. It's just, I mean, everything kind of goes down unless it's any like nocturnal mammals of any sort that are out.
Do you
And
feel they were an ambush predator?
yes, definitely. And that's one of the interesting things too, because I mean, like they feed heavily off the couscous, but I don't know what frequency would be. And if you compare like a couscous, it's a large, it's a large animal. So,
Yeah.
with that cold environment, their lack of, cruising per se movement in the wild, they could sit on a prey item for like a solid month easy. I mean, I feed little sparingly, like, maybe 2 to 3 times a month, a decent sized prey item with my captives. But like that, because that was one of the things I wanted to ask you when you were feeding your animals. How frequently were you feeding your animals?
I won't say bad. I
No?
have this attitude that animals don't, um, for instance, a coyote or a wolf or a fox doesn't eat every day, just
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah, of course.
And so my feeling about a reptile, like an emerald tree ball, for instance, it doesn't, they basically hunt rats on the roots of the trees along the streams, the creeks. Uh,
Yeah,
they don't catch one every 10 days or 14 days like we give it to them in captivity, right? So I like to say, oh God, I forgot, I haven't fed that thing for a month.
yeah,
um, and so I feed almost all my animals that way. I don't keep much anymore, but back then I was very sporadic in feeding them because that's just my philosophy,
yeah.
and
No,
I'm
I
in no
really,
rush to grow them up fast.
yeah, I mean, and I completely agree with you on that too. Like, I feel like, I mean, obviously it's fun to feed,
Oh,
we,
absolutely. I
yeah, I mean,
know.
we want to grow our animals and,
Yeah.
but it's like at the same time, it's like, a lot of that, puts a toll on them too. Like, if you've got an animal that, feeds infrequent and, we bring it into captivity and we're feeding it like every week, we don't know what the long-term effect, ultimately can be on certain things,
Oh, physiologically, yeah. Is
yeah,
their liver meant to handle that load?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's all kinds of questions. One of the, I keep going back to emeralds, but you can feed an emerald a pretty good sized meal that should last it a month. And 5 days after it ate, it's hanging down off the limb, ready to strike anything walks by,
Yeah.
in a feeding pose. And I'm going, there's no way you need to eat right now.
Yeah.
Um, and,
Yeah.
and so I think they're just opportunistic. They don't know when the next one is going to come, so they'll grab it. And
Yeah.
how dense are the couscous in this area with
Yeah,
it?
that's the other thing. That's the other thing too. It's a nocturnal animal. I've seen, I think, maybe one or two in the 15 plus years I've been there. But
Really?
I'm also not actively hunting for them, but I see them in the markets, like, because the locals are shooting arrows at them. And
Yeah.
they, and they're eating them. So I don't know what the abundance, really is.
Well,
Um,
yeah, and so Boelens, if it's an ambush predator, is waiting for one to come along, and it's
yeah.
during daytime, and it's hunting a nocturnal animal. I don't think it's feeding on a regular schedule.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I think it's a very infrequent amount of time, as far as feeding goes. Looking back, on keeping them, what do you think? Do you think, what did we get wrong, do you think, in the early days with where we're at now, keeping these animals, and like what we've learned now compared to then? Does that make sense?
Well, yes, but I wouldn't say we got anything wrong. We just
Yeah.
didn't know anything.
Yeah. Fair
So,
enough.
I mean, it's a python, so you keep them warm, right?
Yeah.
No. Uh, so anybody who approached it that way was making a mistake. And I know when they became, let's say, more available in the later 90s,
Yeah.
uh, um, a lot of people were grabbing them. A lot of ball python breeders were grabbing them, like, I'm going to breed these things.
Yeah.
And won't mention names, but I saw Boelens in not freedom breeders, the other kind of cages, the long
Yeah. The
gray.
pull out racks and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And like I shook my head, like, no, this is not a boa constrictor. It's not a ball. It's not a ball python.
Yeah.
This is so far away from what this snake is. And we already knew from the mortality and the
Yeah.
difficulty that something was far more difficult. So I think if there was a mistake made, it was a lot of people rushing in thinking they could do this.
Yeah. It's funny you should say that. That comment I keep in my head so frequently when I talk to Boelens keepers, because it's like, I remember when I started really, I mean, because I had started working with them. I started getting really interested in them in probably the early 90s, and then started working with them mid to late 90s. And I
Hmm.
remember seeing these people like, they'd grab animals and they'd be like, I'm going to breed it. And within the first year, a 4 foot animal turned 8 feet long,
Oh,
and then the animal didn't breed. So then they got rid of it. And it started this cycle over again where it's like Joe Schmo got so and so's collection, and you got to restart basically the time cycle with these animals, do this and do that. And it was just like everybody was like forgetting about why we keep animals, because when we were kids, we caught that box turtle crossing the road because it was so fucking cool and it was just awesome. And now instead of that, everything nowadays, unfortunately, has such a high monetary value to it, which I know, I mean, you've got to pay bills and you've got to do that stuff, but there's certain things where it just doesn't work that way. And I felt like the Boelens scenario was one of those big factors, as far as like, you can't do that with those animals. If you're going to get animals, you need to maintain those animals in your collection. You need to set them up correctly, and you need to either work with them or not work with them.
well, and it's all about breeding and dollars, right?
Yeah.
The breeding craze for profit. And when the albino corn snakes and the albino
Yeah.
berms and then the ball python craze, there's just a lot of people who got the absolute, I don't want to be critical of them, but the
No.
wrong outlook on keeping reptiles. They weren't.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to get down on those guys, but when someone like that grabs a Boelens python and thinks, I'm going to get this thing up to size,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's not good to do with any snake.
No. Yeah. You're absolutely right. You should. I mean, and like I said, I don't like. I'm just. I see a lot of people, like I said, we have to pay our bills, we have to pay for rodents, we have to pay for the electricity, this and that, and so there is a lot of monetary things associated with this stuff. But certain animals, in my opinion, it's like you can't keep Boelens looking to make $1 million, and that's my personal opinion. It's like
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
yeah, it's just not one of those animals. I mean, I know people that are like actively working with them and just working with those animals that have had success and that are doing fantastic jobs, but they're still not at a point where it's like, I don't know if I'm going to get eggs this year, kind of thing. It's like we're still at this infancy stage where, I mean, we're opening up doors where we're just now being able to keep these things alive, till they're adults. I don't even remember when the first babies came on the scene when they were brought in. I mean, most of the stuff was adults. Um, but yeah, I mean, we could talk for hours about that. I think I owe you a beer at least for all the all the bugging and all that stuff. So one of these days
Oh, it's been awesome, area. It's been
we'll
awesome.
sit down and have a good one. But as we start getting closer to the end of this, I had a couple more questions I wanted to ask you. Um, so with how do you feel about the current direction Boelens Python husbandry with the newer generation is working out today, or working with today?
I'm really not qualified to answer that. I don't know.
Okay.
Is
I'll
that
skip that
fair? I mean,
question. I'll
I'm not.
skip that question. All
All
right,
right.
let me X that one out. Okay, so if somebody wanted to get into keeping Boelens pythons now, what advice would you give them based on your experience?
Well, first thing I tell them would be to talk to you.
Thanks.
So, no, seriously. And then based on my experience, I would just say, whoa, this is a very, very challenging, difficult species. And if you're going to work with it, I hope you've done a lot of other relatively difficult species before to respect this animal and how complex its biology is.
Yeah.
It's no Burmese python or ball python or corn snake.
Yeah.
Not even remotely close. And if they don't have that perspective, I'd say absolutely don't do it. You're throwing your money away. But
Yeah.
this animal deserves a tremendous amount of respect for, number one, that it evolved and exists where it is,
Yeah.
and then for us to be privileged enough to work with it, you have to respect the product of that evolution, for that snake to evolve where it did.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling to me
Yeah.
that
No,
that's
I agree.
there.
That's well said. Well said. Okay, and my last question for you. If there was a moment or a story from when you were working with Boelens pythons that still sticks in your head after all these years, what would that be?
Probably one of my first copulations, and having some semen leak out, and I quickly got it on
Yeah.
a Q-tip or something, and got it onto a microscope slide because I had ultrasound microscope, all that
Cool.
stuff, and seeing the sperm wiggling around in there, and at that moment I said, he's injecting her with sperm. I'm going to get eggs, and of course I didn't know I was wrong, but
Well, you got really
that
close.
moment was
You got really
phenomenal.
close, man.
I did. I dare say if it wasn't for lungworms, I would have had a clutch. Now, I understand they're not that easy to hatch, so who knows?
Yeah, there's some tricks with them. I don't know. It's an interesting animal. It's an interesting animal, but I mean, I remember seeing those, and I know we keep talking about these pictures. I'm working on the volume 2 of Serpents in the Cloud, so I've got
Oh, great.
yes. So you had sent me out some of those photos I'm going to be including in the book so people can see them, because I want people to see like the amount of work that you put into these and thinking outside of the box during that time, which was like the heyday, giving these animals just like everything and anything that they could possibly have needed that you were aware of at the time. So they'll be there. But I just wanted to thank you again so much, Stan, for coming on. It really has been just a really fun night talking with you, and I hope we can get together one of these days and have a drink and just pick up where we left off. And I mean, it's really been a great time. I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you having me, and I will make it a point to come down to Texas and
Great.
see
We
all the
have good
great work
barbecue.
you've done.
Yeah,
I really, I will get out there.
it'll be great. So,
All right.
thank you guys for tuning in tonight. Once again, you can follow us on the Trap Talk Reptile Network, as well as the Boelens Python Roundtable and Project Black Python. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Stan, and have a great night, guys.
Good night, Ari.
Night, man.